You know, it's amazing because, and not to say that hypnosis is like some miracle pill. I mean, it's absolutely not. You have to know what you're doing and you have to use it properly. But I've had amazing results with people in just a couple of sessions who I think if they went to a traditionally trained psychotherapist, they might be talking about it for another year, 2 years, 5 years.
Well, I can tell you as a therapist, it's probably true.
I mean, I had one really good example that's just fresh in my mind is I had a guy who was an Iraq war vet who came toward the end of, like, mid-December of 2008. And he was experiencing symptoms of PTSD. He was experiencing intense anxiety, was already on meds from the psychiatrist who he had seen, wasn't able to sleep, wasn't able to be in crowds, like he couldn't go to the mall because he just felt so agitated. And fireworks went off. He would have to hide in the basement. He couldn't stand the sound of loud fireworks because when he was in Iraq, he would hear the incoming, explosions, and he would immediately just dive underneath something. I worked with him one time, and this is not a typical example, but I worked with him one time, and I got an email from him about 3 or 4 weeks ago in which he said, since our one session, he has now gone off the meds. He is now sleeping better than he's ever slept in his entire life, and he is feeling like he's turned a corner in his life.
What did you do?
Well, what I did was I basically, the way that I start with someone like this is that I don't look at him as being broken, and I don't look at him as being someone who needs a ton of sessions or to go back into the past and heal these wounds. What I do is I basically look at what he's thinking about, where his focus is, and helping him to change that focus. And by changing that focus, when you're focused on things that are good, and when you're focused on your health, and you're reminded of the things about your life that are positive, that there's no anxiety. When the focus is on the things that cause the anxiety,
like the power of now,
it's just like you can't be stressed if you're not thinking about something stressful. You can't, you can't be anxious unless you're thinking about something that produces anxiety. So all I really did for him was to focus him on the good things that were going on in his life. I reinforced the fact that he was a young man, that he was intelligent, that he was capable, that he'd been through some really difficult times, and that it was natural to feel stress and anxiety as he was, but also that he was able to heal. Now, the important thing is this, though, is that hypnosis itself is deep relaxation, which is the opposite of anxiety. It's the opposite of stress. What I do with a client like him, what I did with him, is I record the session. Okay, so when I record the hypnosis portion of the session, and of course I'm in broadcasting, this is all professional, it sounds wonderful, I do it digitally, and I send him a download where he can download the file. So he listens to this recording every day, like I did when I first went to a hypnotherapist. Every day he relaxes very deeply for about 30 minutes. Hears wonderful messages about how he's going to recover, about how what he experienced was natural. And the cumulative effect of doing that for a couple of months is that you start to feel really, really relaxed and really good.
But if it were that easy, I mean, everyone that did every single type of therapy that people say, okay, this one works, this is 90% success rate. I mean, if it were that easy, every single Vietnam vet, Iraqi vet, sexual abuse survivor, and I didn't invite you on the show to argue with you at all.
All right,
so.
No, go ahead. Please. I love arguing.
Oh, do you? Okay. But I didn't want it to be set up like that. But anyway, so it's, I mean, you make it sound like I'm a trauma survivor, and
right.
I work with helping people with sexual abuse and everything from severe trauma to mild trauma. But, my therapy isn't successful for everybody, and I guess what I'm saying is every single person that has horrible trauma is not going to come in one session, right?
Right, absolutely. That's why I said it's not a typical example, but I have had several like that, So, the thing is that there is no therapist who's successful with every single client.
Except Tony Robbins says he is.
Right.
Did you know that?
Well, yeah. And that's the thing. The thing about hypnosis that makes it, or NLP, or all this, self-help stuff that makes it so hard for people to swallow is that the claims are just so over the top by everyone that seems to lead the profession. And that really ticked me off when I first started doing this for a living. And it made me want to deliver the message of what it is in a more down-to-earth way, that people could actually go, okay, that makes sense.
So you're not saying that every single person that comes to you after one session is going to stop smoking, lose weight, be cured of their PTSD?
Absolutely not. I mean, now, with smoking, I have a really high success rate because it's pretty much the same across the board for most people. I mean,
what do you mean?
The dynamics of the habit are the same, meaning it's something that is learned through practice and repetition. It's a habit that's developed. And after you've worked with, over 100 people on stop smoking, you'll see the patterns and the similarities.
Right.
So there aren't very many surprises that I get when I work with someone on that issue.
what do you think the success rate is that hypnotherapy has with stopping smoking?
Well, your success rate depends on who you are as the practitioner. Now, a hypnotherapist is just like any other profession. You can have a car mechanic who's terrible, and you can have a dentist who's not so great, who screws up your teeth. So, the extent to which hypnosis is effective is it's a testimony to the skill or the experience of the practitioner, and also the methods that are being used.
Well, what's funny is I never was a big fan of the big hypnosis, when people go to a giant conference center.
Right, the big group seminars.
And my husband went for Stop Smoking, 20 years ago, I guess. But, he said, this is so ridiculous. He lays down, does the little thing, never smoked again.
Mm-hmm. And I hear that.
Believe it.
I hear that all the time. Some of my clients have been to those seminars in the past and maybe have quit smoking or haven't or something like that. Some do, some don't.
Right.
Yeah, and I did a seminar on January the 4th, which was World Hypnotism Day. So I did a Stop Smoking seminar. And I've had 2 people just within the past couple of weeks email me and say that they still haven't smoked yet since then. Now, some have. It's not everyone. But in that environment, what it is, it's like in a comedy hypnosis show. Some people are going to respond to what is said, and some people aren't. And when you have somebody in a one-on-one setting, your degree of success is much higher because you can focus specifically what you're saying to that person.
And what was funny is my husband said, he sits up and he thinks, what a waste of time and money, and then never smoked again.
Well, I read the first book that I picked up, the second book I picked up and read about hypnosis was, I just picked up The Idiot's Guide to Hypnosis when I was just curious about it. And I never forget, the first chapter in there, I forget the name of the author, but what you mentioned was that's very typically the case. Someone will come to her to quit smoking, they'll leave the session saying, I wasn't hypnotized, and then 8 months later they'll say, well, I quit smoking, but it had nothing to do with the hypnosis. And that's very common because the experience is different from what people expect, which is people expect to go to sleep, to have no awareness of what happens, and then to wake up at the end of it and just not want to smoke anymore, or, be a different person. And
there was a psychologist, I attended it was like a 5-person workshop here in Atlanta for a practice that I was in, and he was a clinical hypnotherapist, psychologist, but what he did was put you in deep trance, and I'll never forget, because I've done tons of the, the relaxation type of hypnotherapy and all that stuff, regression especially, tons of regression. So we're sitting there, and I volunteer, of course, but he was counting me down, and I opened my eyes, and I said, I'm not doing this. But it was so, I wish, and he said to me later, he said, you would benefit from it greatly, Suzi. He said, you would love. So anyway, on the air, would you? I'm kidding. But he said, Suzi, you'll love it. It was just 4 or 5 people in this room, and I was like, it's too intimate. I can't do it.
Right.
But I had never had that experience of starting to go into a deep trance. Do you do the deep trance?
Oh, yeah. I mean, deep trance, we often say that in hypnotherapy that the metaphor of deep isn't really the best one to use. You don't necessarily have to go so deeply that you don't know what's happening or that you lose awareness in order for benefits to come as a result of it.
Right, because that's what I do with my clients. I never do the...
Right. I mean, all you have to do, it's a very light state of trance that is necessary to produce the results that you need.
But with all the work that I'd done before in emotional work and trauma work, I never went into this. I could feel myself falling.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it scared me so much. But what is the difference and why? Because I'll do anything.